Billy, what's the story of you shifting from being an actor to being a writer?
I started out as an actor, and I hit a spot where I was not getting a lot of auditions. I was never a type. I'm half Italian, but I'm not completely Italian. So I'd go up against Italian kids, and then I'd look like a wasp. Then I'd go up for wasp roles, and I'd look ethnic or so. So I started writing myself roles for myself. And so I started writing the plays for myself, and then I started directing so no one messed up my plays. Then I started producing so no one messed up my direction. So I've done a lot of that stuff. And the plays ended up bringing me out to Hollywood to write for Bob Newhart, and entered the sitcom world doing that. And I go back and forth. I do my TV here, and then where most people go to Paris when they have some time off, I would go to New Jersey and put on a play, and then go back and forth. And in certain plays, we took to New York and did Off-Broadway, and then they're done all over the world.
I want to hear more about the stage plays in a little bit, but I'm curious, when you were told something in an audition, was it ethnically ambiguous, or they didn't tell you that?
They didn't tell me anything. They told me nothing. I just wasn't getting any work. And I didn't go out for commercials. I just went out for movies and stuff. And there was one audition where I went out for a commercial, and it was the last one I went on, because I was there with this. I had to read with this girl, and the two of us are reading, and the casting director got a phone call in the middle of our audition, and she said, "Keep going." And I stopped, and the girl I was with kept reading. I went, "Wait a minute." And I took the phone out of the woman's hand and hung it up. I said, "Don't you ever do that to another actor again." And I walked out, and I called my agent and said, "I don't want to go on any more commercials. I'm done with that." Yeah.
And is that sort of the night that you furiously sat down and started writing, or you'd already been writing, so this was just something you decided to do more of?
I've always been writing, even as a kid. I would write stories about the people in my class in 5th grade and read it to the class and that kind of thing. And when I was in 9th grade, I wrote the play that the school put on. And then when I was in high school, I started running the children's theater at a local theater. I would write a new show every week, and we do it Saturdays and Sundays. But it had to be, I had to work around the existing set for the adult show, and there was no budget. So I would just scramble these things together. We had one throne that was backstage that you could use for the fairy tales. That was it. So I got to learn how to write fast, and also it taught me when you're producing for the theater, because I ran my own theater. Children's theater has got to be in there because it offsets the cost of the adults. So you've always got to do the children's theater. And as a writer, working with children's theater is a great learning experience, because the kids are the most honest audience you'll ever play to. If they hate it, they start talking. So you got to be able to catch their attention. I got in trouble with this theater, though, because I would do any fairy tale that had a girl's name in the title. That's the ones you did, because they filled the theater. All the divorced fathers would take their daughters something to do. "Oh, we can go see Cinderella," And so I did Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, all those kind of shows. But when I did them, I thought it would be funny to have the stepsisters played by these two big burly guys in drag. And I had the stepmother, I cast a drag queen who had been in a local production of Peter Pan. He played Captain Hook, and I was one of the pirates or something. So I cast him, and he could imitate anybody, so I had him play the evil stepmother as Betty Davis. And the audience went nuts for it. So the next week, we did Sleeping Beauty, and I had him do Tallulah Bankhead as the witch. And everybody went crazy for that, but then the parents started to complain. And the lady got me after the show, and she said, what am I supposed to do if my son sees your show and wants to put on a dress? I said, "Bring him back, I'll put him in the next show." But I've always done, children's theater was a great way to start. And then when I finally, in 1978, I was doing the first Star Trek movie. I had a very small part in that. I had a bigger part, but Leonard Nimoy came to work, and suddenly I had less and less to do. It's another story. But anyway, so I was sitting around with all this alien makeup on, and I couldn't go out for lunch. They didn't want anybody to see me because it was a big secretive thing to be doing this movie. So I was trapped in my dressing room when I wasn't on camera. So I called my girlfriend and said, bring my typewriter. We're going to make use of this. We're not going on enough auditions anyway. I'm not doing anything when I'm not, when I can't leave the room. So we wrote ourselves the first play, which was Love, Sex, and the IRS. And like most actors writing their first play, it was all about me. And if you read through our plays in order, you can see the learning curve of how I learned how to write, and then it stopped being about me and started being about the show, the story, more important than what I got to do as a comedian.
And I'm curious, why stage plays and not screenplays?
I had no show business in my family. All I knew was the theater, really, and I had no idea how to get into the movies at all. I eventually did, but I didn't know at the time. So when I started writing, and also I love being in front of an audience. That, to me, I mean, film's great, TV's great. I like being on stage with my friends, putting on my shows. So it was always about theater for me.
What are the skills that you learned as an actor that you then used as a writer?
It's been very important to be an actor when you're a writer, I think, because you know what will work in front of an audience. A lot of times when I've given actors scripts, and let's say during an audition, I hear people reading the same scene over and over, and they keep tripping on one word, they keep tripping on that line, they keep, and suddenly it's like, no, it's the wrong line, it's not you, it's the way we wrote it. And because I've been performing forever, I have a better ear for what'll play and what won't play, if it's too wordy, if that kind of thing. I also find that when I write specifically for the actors I have in mind. And I've been working with the same company of people for almost 50 years. So I know Tom's cadence, I know Glenn's cadence. What I hate when I read a script is everybody talks the same. Everybody has the same vocabulary, everybody has the same. That's not how it is. That's not the real world. So when I write specifically for people, whether they play the role or not. I can hear it better, And because I was an actor, I think it helps me envision the whole thing better because I know how to play each thing I'm writing.
So then, if you're writing for this metaphorical Tom or Glenn, when they come in as the actor, you can kind of say, "That's not the Tom I had in mind," or "That's not what I heard." Do you ever adjust it for the new actor?
I always adjust according to the audience. When I write the shows, I write specifically for people. They come in, if they're not available, I'll cast somebody else, and then I'll adjust it to the person I'm working with. But we rewrite all the time. None of my shows have ever been set, even though technically they're supposed to be. I'll always be rewriting jokes or this part doesn't work. Jane Milmore, my partner, and I, we had a shorthand that we did with our actors. And as a company of actors, they're all close friends, but they've been working with us forever, so they're used to this. This isn't unfair to do to anybody, but this is what we would do. I'd be on stage in a scene, Jane would be out in the audience, and from across the room, one or the two of us would be going like this in the middle of the scene, which meant cut this bit, or throw it out. So the actors performing with us would be horrified to see me going like this while they're talking. So, but anyway, we always rewrote, and then after we would finish the first production, we would rewrite again before we published the show with Samuel French. And then if I ever resurrect any of these shows and start doing them, I start rewriting them again anyway. It's never finished, as far as I'm concerned. It'll never be done.
How much writing had you done before you were hired on Newhart?
We had probably maybe 7 or 8 plays published with Samuel French and going around the world. And they were it was the 7th season of Newhart, I guess. And they were looking for playwrights. The people who ran the show, this is just a weird coincidence, but it worked out great. Mark Egan, Mark Solomon had been writers who had been taught by Bob Carroll Jr. and Madeline Davis, who were the I Love Lucy writers. And I Love Lucy is the whole reason I got into the show business in the first place. I wanted to do that sort of comedy. And they were hiring playwrights to be on their writing staff. And so we met with them and had a great time. And I ended up getting friendly with Madeline and Bob, and it was just couldn't have been better. Bob Newhart spoiled me for every show that came afterwards. It was a perfectly run show. And we went home at 5 o'clock as writers. We went home at 5 o'clock every night, as opposed to shows that last till 3 in the morning doing rewrites. And any show I've ever done where you're rewriting at 3 in the morning, nothing you're writing is good. It's just different. And I asked Bob and Madeline once, because they did 39 episodes a year on I Love Lucy alone, just the two of them. And they always went home by 5 o'clock. They didn't rewrite anything until the middle of the night and all that. I said, how did you do that? And she said, well, if you can't do it by 5 o'clock, you shouldn't be doing this. It's like, oh, okay. So when we do our shows, when we would do our TV shows, we would do one take of every scene. That's it. Bob Newhart taught us that. You start at 7 o'clock, and he had a dinner reservation at 8:30 that he needed to get to. So you did one scene, and that was it. Move on like a play. If you got a costume change, make it fast. Get back out, because all that mattered to him was the audience in the bleachers, not the one in the camera. In the bleachers, the people there being entertained. And it was a great learning experience. And most of the shows that we've done on our own, we did the same way. One take and move on. And even Martin Lawrence, when I did the Martin TV show, could not be more different than Bob Newhart, but it was the same thing with him. One take and move on, because the people in the bleachers were all that mattered. And Bob also didn't work with a laugh track. He said, if I don't get a laugh, the people at home aren't stupid. They'll know if it's not funny, they shouldn't laugh at it. If it's funny, they'll laugh. So there was whatever the bleacher people laughed at, that's what was on the track. That's it.
And oftentimes the bleacher people, those were more tourists, weren't they?
Mostly tourists. Although there was always, there was one row in the front of all the Newhart shows that were all his old friends. I remember Ava Gabor sitting there she had a stun gun on her lap in case anybody came near her. I do remember that. And Natalie Schaefer from Gilligan's Island, she was there. It was a weird collection of people, but that one row had different people every night. The rest were tourists.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before you were hired for Newhart as a writer, had you auditioned as an actor for the show?
Yes. Yeah, actually, what was it? Maybe 2 months before we had our writing interview, I had an audition where I was, it was a fantasy scene with Mary Fran, something like that, and I came in to read for that. But it was 110 degrees, and they didn't let the actors park on the lot, so we had to park in the neighborhood and walk through the sound stages to get to the office, to the audition, and I was dying. And I asked one of the ladies if I had something to drink, and she said, no, but you can go down to the men's room and put your head under the faucet. Okay, so I did. Maybe 2 months later, we were hired. We had our meeting our writer meeting. They let us pull onto the lot. We parked the car right next to the sound stage. We walked into the office. Can we get you some soda? Yeah, I'd like a Coke. Sure. And that's the difference between how actors are treated out here and how writers are treated out here. So when it was like, okay, do I want to give up my acting career to write? Yeah, right now I do. This is much better, And as I said, it could not have been a better first experience.
Do you still consider yourself an actor who writes things?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of times I hear, serious playwrights talking about their crafts, and I'm thinking, I don't know what they're talking about. I just know how to write some funny stuff and put it. There were no messages in any of our shows. We snuck a few in, but our early plays were all farces. They were all just broad farces, slapstick, big physical humor kind of things. And as the years went on, we started changing things around. and trying new things. And I did find over the years that if something scared the hell out of me, it was usually the right choice. I don't know how to write this. I don't know if I can do this. That's the show I should do. And those shows were always better. So we got rid of the farce stuff and we started doing, like I did a show called Silent Laughter, which was a slapstick silent movie that took place on stage, silent. Actors' dialogue was over our heads on title cards. We had a big theater organ playing along with the actors, and it was done like we were in a Buster Keaton movie. And we ran Off-Broadway for a while, and that was great. But the first rehearsal I had with my poor actors, I'm explaining what we're going to do, and they're looking at me like, what? And we didn't know how to rehearse it because there were no cues. We couldn't talk, so you had to watch for your cue from the wings to know to come in. And right before we opened, a couple of different people went, Billy, I don't know what we're doing. This is a mistake. This is just a mistake. Then we brought the organ guy in. And as he started playing, everybody went, oh, I get this now. And we got a great review in the Times, and it was good. It was good. But the scarier the show, the better, to me. We wrote a musical, not because we were musicians, but because we thought it would be fun to do, and nobody ever told us we couldn't. So we jumped in to do that. We did a show called You've Got Hate Mail, which was the story of my writing partner Jane's divorce. Long story, but it was told through email. So it was 5 people on laptops and this marriage falling apart because of an email that goes to the wrong person. And that's done all over the world now. But all these things are like, should we do this? It's kind of weird. Yeah, let's do it.
And so if it didn't scare you, did you know that it would make you complacent?
I don't want to say we got bored, but we found we had a formula, and we were just following the formula of writing a farce. You know, we knew somebody was going to come into the door, and then you have to pretend to be somebody or not, and all this sort of thing. And it just got to be, we've done this. We need to do something new, you know. And the play that really changed things was when we wrote a show called Drop Dead, which was about a community. No, it was about a bunch of has-been actors putting on a murder mystery in an off-Broadway theater and all the things that can go wrong. I might call it The Play That Goes Wrong because on purpose, because there's a show called The Play That Goes Wrong, and I sat there and watched that. It's a very funny show, really well done. And I was sitting in the audience on Broadway going, that's from my show, that's from my show, that's from my show. So they didn't steal anything, but I think if you're doing a show about actors, you know, things going wrong, you're going to hit some of the same things. But I was just sitting there going, God, you know. But I enjoy doing farce, going back to that. Because nobody does it, and nobody does it well when they do it. They look down their noses at it, and it's an art form. And we've been very lucky in that I've got a great troupe of people that are specialists at this stuff, and we've been working together for almost 50 years. We can't take the falls as easily as we could. We're all bruised up. One of my guys, Glenn Jones, who's in all our shows, he got hit by a drunk driver after a rehearsal one night, and he was all banged up.
Oh, no.
And he goes to the hospital, and he said he felt fine, but they taking X-rays and doing all this stuff to him. And the doctor comes in and says, Glenn, you're much worse than you think. And he said, what do you mean? You have a chip in a bone in your neck. He said, oh, that's not from the accident. That's from Drop Dead. Billy had a doorknob in his hand, threw me up against the wall, and oh, all right. Well, your ribs, you've got broken ribs. He said, no, that's from Silent Laughter. We were doing a bit, and I fell on the floor. I fell on my gun. And, okay. Well, what about the scrape on the side of your face? Oh, last night at rehearsal, we had a plastic fruit fight, and I got a pear sliced me in the face. And the doctor said to him, well, I think we've learned something here, Glenn. You're better off getting hit by a drunk driver than you are doing those Van Zandt Milmore shows. And it's true. We're all bruised. We're all banged up. We all, you know, but that's our gig.
What happened with the first Spec script that you've ever written?
Oh,
Spec.
I came out to LA as a playwright, and I got my agent out here, and he looked at all my published books, and he went, "These are fantastic. Nobody out here cares about your little books." I said, "What?" He said, "You need to write a spec script," and he explained what that was. So we said, "Well, I don't know, what should we write?" And he said, "Well, I know Head of the Class is looking for people to write their show, so why don't you write a Head of the Class?" I said, "All right." So we went home, we wrote a Head of the Class script, which I thought to this day is probably the best Head of the Class script they would have ever seen. Handed it in to the agent. He read it, and he went, "Yeah, it's okay. Didn't make me laugh." And I was like, "Didn't make you laugh? That's all we do, you know?" So I went home with Jane, and we said, "Okay, we're writing another one." And we picked a show called Slap Maxwell. It was Dabney Coleman. I think it only lasted a season. But it was a guy having a midlife crisis, and it was a hilariously funny show, and he was great. So we wrote a really outrageous Slap Maxwell show. And we wrote it in 24 hours. And it was basically an FU to my agent to say, "Oh, you don't think we're funny? Then read this," you know. And he read it the next day, and we sat in the office, and while he read it, and he went, "You'll be making 6 figures in 3 months." And he got us that was the Newhart job. He got us the Newhart job. We had Newhart or Murphy Brown. We didn't know which one we wanted to take. Wow. But Newhart had 22 committed episodes, and Murphy Brown only had 13. So we went, 22, let's go there. And I'm glad we did.
And did he at least laugh?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Oh, he did.
God,
he laughed.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you knew that you had a winner on your hands. Okay.
I get asked about spec scripts all the time. And what people don't realize when they're first starting out and they have to write a spec script is you're competing against thousands of other people writing a spec script. Everything you've got has got to be put into that one script. Don't rush it, because people are only going to read you one time. You know, if I get a script and it's like, and then a year later I get a script from the same guy, when I already read him. You know, that one script has to have everything in it. You have to know the show, you have to know the characters, you have to know how to write jokes, you have to know story. You have to know how to write a button on the end of a scene. You have to know editing. Because when I'm putting a staff together, which I haven't done in a while, but when you're putting a staff together, you want somebody who can write jokes. You want somebody who can write story. You want somebody who has some connection to the topic of the show. You know, if it's a medical show, you want somebody with a medical something or other in their past. So you need to cram it all into the same script. Some of the strangest spec scripts I ever read where somebody wrote, this is a long time ago, but it was well after Mary Tyler Moore show had already gone off the air. Somebody wrote a Mary Tyler Moore spec script, and it was fantastic. And it really catches your eye, but it had to be good. But you only get one shot at the script, so it's got to have everything in it. Write it, let it sit. Don't rush. Don't rush, because if you rush, you know, the best thing for me when I'm writing is to write it fast and then let it sit for a week or two. Because when you pick it back up, the problems are glaring. You'll see it a mile, you know, and then you fix it. To me, when you're writing a script, I think of it as you get this big block of marble, and that's your first draft, a big shapeless thing. And then you start chipping away at it. That's your second draft. Chip again, that's your third draft, fourth draft. And eventually you see what it's supposed to be, and you can fine tune it to make it exactly what it should be. But I always tell people, first draft, kick it out, just write it, get it over with. Because the easiest thing to do is fix something, I think. So a lot of times we would get 3 weeks when we were staff writers. They'd give you 3 weeks to write a first draft. And Jane and I would write it in 2 days and go, okay, what do you want to do with the rest of the time? I don't know, let's go to the movies or something, you know. And then we come back and fix it. When I was running my own shows, I would give people a week to write the first draft. You know, just get it out, and then you can fine tune it. And I think that makes it. It also helps in television because time is always a problem. You know, when you write a pilot, could be 6 months to write a pilot, and your reward for that is you get to do the same job in a week at a time instead of 6 months at a time when you go to series. And I also say Ours is the only job where you spend 6 weeks, or let's say a month, writing a script. And then for the rest of the week when you're shooting it, you have different groups of people telling you how you did it wrong. That's our job. And you have to sort of rise above that. When I first came out to LA, I met with Bob, what was his name? Sam Bobrick. He had written a couple of plays, Murder at the Howard Johnsons and those kind of shows, comedies on Broadway. And he was running some show out here. And we met with him, and he said, "You're a playwright, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, let me explain the difference between a playwright and a TV writer. And a playwright is the top of the pyramid, and everybody works to please the vision of the playwright. Now you're writing for television, you're the blueprint. That's it." And it took me a while to get used to the idea that that was it. When you're the showrunner, it's different, then it's your show. But when you're a writer on somebody else's staff, I remember on Newhart, actually, the first script we wrote, I forget, somebody came in the door and I had them say hello, And in the rewrite room, they changed it to hi. I was like, why is hi better than hello? What, And I was incensed that they're changing our words, Jane. I don't like that. And but the job of a staff writer, whether you know better than the showrunner or not, your job is to imitate the writing of the showrunner. So everybody so all the episodes sound the same. And the first few rules I heard in the writer's room were, if we're on page 5 and you have a note on page 4, keep your mouth shut. We've already passed. Like, oh, okay. If you have a joke that's better than the one the executive producer had, keep your mouth shut. Okay, got it. So, but when you're running your own show, and I've seen it when members of my staff, I can see when I change something of theirs, I can see them, looking at somebody like, mine was better. It's like, anyway.
And forgive me, what is a button at the end of a scene?
Little joke moment.
Okay, interesting.
A lot of TV shows now don't have it. Sometimes it almost looks like they turn the camera off in the middle of a scene now because it just sort of stops. But there was always a comic button at the end of a sitcom scene.
Oh, okay. So in Newhart, let's say one of the brothers, one of the Darryls came in, and something, triggered Bob or something.
They'd walk out the door, he'd say something funny, and that would be the button, that kind of thing.
Okay, interesting. And you think they don't do it now just for time's sake because we're used to a faster pace?
I think what's happened now is, well, the sitcom world, where is it, by the way? Where is it? You do have Abbott Elementary, which is a good comedy show, but you don't have in front of the audience 3-camera, 4-camera comedies anymore. They're not around. They're filmed like that sometimes, but there's usually no audience there when you're doing it. I don't know when it changed. Probably changed around the time of The Office, which is brilliant and it brought back more one-camera comedies. The Office also introduced basically where writers could be the actors too. You were separate camps for years. There were times we would write shows, and there's a role for Jane I'd write in, and Jane would write a role for me, and we were told, no, you're the writers. It's like, well, her character's sitting at a desk. No one's it's easy to rehearse, No, you're the writers. Okay. The Office came out, and everybody in the cast were writing, not everybody, but and I think that opened the door to a lot of very good work from other people.
If you were interested in storytelling, you may also like our new book, Story Questions. It's a story tool that offers you over 1,500 story questions that you can use as story prompts. It's packed with over 40 categories, so whether you are in the brainstorming stages, developing characters, dialogue, or rewriting, it can help you at every stage of the writing process. Think about this statement. Most powerful stories are just great answers to strong questions. We've linked up to story questions in the information section below. What type of ambition do you think it takes to make it to the highest levels of the entertainment industry?
I think you've got to have a healthy ego. You just do, because there's so much rejection in our business that, otherwise you just go cry every night, But I think what you need to you need to want it more than anything else. You really do, because there's so many other people who want the same thing. And tunnel vision helps. I've never taken no for an answer. If somebody says no, I find a way to go around it. But I would say I've always, family is more important to me than any of this stuff. And if it gets in the way of that, I don't want it, you know. And life is too short. That's the other thing. If I'm not having a good time, I don't want to do it. So that's why I use the same people all the time, because I just like being with them. But there are people who only are interested in the fame and the celebrity, and then there are people like me that's only interested in the work. And that's the important part. And I think if you want the celebrity, you may get it for 10 minutes, and then it's going to go away. You need to work at the craft. And in terms of writing, I get up and I write every single day. I do not believe in writer's block. I think it's just a lazy person. Get up and write. Maybe you're writing garbage, but at least you're in the process of doing it, and then you can look at what you did and go, oh, I can fix that. Also, the thing that inspires me is not to see great work. I see great work and it's like, oh, I can't do that. But show me something terrible, I can go home and write for years. I can do better than that. How did that get on Broadway? So, anyway, I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. That's great. You said having a healthy ego. Did you always have that, or does it come with the knocks and bruises that you talked about in another segment, the physical bruises?
I always had a pretty good ego, I think, but I got most of that from the audiences I'd be working in front of. I knew that I had something that was, you know, working, and nothing fueled that more than getting laughs, you know. But not when I say I have a healthy ego, I don't mean like, you know, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean you have to have a good sense of your talents and what you can and can't do, and because there's always somebody else ready to take your place too, and as I'm getting older, I'm seeing, you know, people who are getting hired are younger and younger, and it's like, oh, didn't expect that one, you know. I still look in the mirror and think before I look in the mirror, I still think I'm 35 years old, and then I look in the mirror and go, what did you do to yourself? But I think you have to have a healthy ego to succeed. But you also have to have a craft that you're working at all the time. I don't think I know anything. When one job ends and I start the next one, I feel like I'm brand new and I don't know what I'm doing at all, and then I figure it out. One of the reasons I was so into Lucy and I Love Lucy is I related in a weird way. Not only did I learn how to write from those people studying their scripts and learning timing from watching her and Vivian Vance and Desi Arnaz and William Frawley work, but a lot of times I felt like a Lucy character where she would be thrown into something and then figure out how to get out of it. And that's how I've sort of approached my entire career. I was like, I'll say yes, and then I'll go, okay, now how do I do this? And then try and figure it out. And that's kept it fun for me too. I think if I ever get to a place where I think I know everything, then the work's going to be terrible and I shouldn't be doing this anymore.
And forgive me, I think you told a funny story somewhere else where someone was asking for your autograph. I'm not sure if this was in New Jersey. And then they wanted, can you do one for the girls in the office?
You know the story. Yes, I'll tell the story.
It's really good.
The first bit of fame, I guess, was, if you want to call it that, was when I did Jaws 2 as my first movie. So my hometown put my name on the marquee, and you know, it was great. So I go to the theater, and it was a multiplex, and this lady comes up to me and she says, can I get your autograph? I said, yeah, sure, you know. So I sign a thing. Would you sign one for my son? I said, yeah, what's his name? Oh, okay, and I sign that. Would you sign one for my daughter? My daughter's going to want one too. Sure. my neighbors are going to really we have to get them for my neighbors. So I'm signing and signing and signing. I said, so did you enjoy the movie? She said, oh, no, we didn't see it. I said, what do you mean you didn't see it? She said, no, we're going to see Grease because John Travolta's better than you. That was my first taste of fame.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That could be, a play could be made about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's,
yeah.
wow, that's,
Yeah.
I love it. We'll just keep it at that. That's, I love the story. I'm sure it was painful at the time, but.
No, it was funny. It was ridiculous. I always talk about writing fast, and that the Children's Theater helped me write fast, which is good for TV and all that stuff. But every year for about 30 years, we would do our TV, and then we would go back home and put on a show. So it was an original show almost every year. And so there's one year we get a call from the theater. We have to start selling tickets. So, what's the name of the show? And we didn't have anything written at all. And I said to Jane, well, call it Do Not Disturb. It'll take place in a hotel room. We'll figure it out later. So we give the name Do Not Disturb to the theater. They start advertising it, and we figure, oh, we got a couple months. We'll be fine. And we started trying to sell our pilots, like it was pilot season. And we didn't sell a pilot, so we thought, okay, well, we can sit down and start writing the show. And I get a phone call from the set designer. Billy, when am I getting a script? I said, oh, we're still working on it. We hadn't started. And I said, it's a hotel room, so I want a bed in the center, I want a door over here, I want a window over there, a door to the bathroom, and a closet, and think of the Plaza Hotel. And he went, okay. And so he started designing the set, and they're still selling tickets. And so we finally, we sit down to write it, and we fall into we find the I Love Lucy original pilot episode that's never been seen. We find it. And so we have that, and we go to CBS and we sell it as a special to debut footage that no one has seen in 40 years. So we're putting that together, and now the clock's ticking, and we don't have a show. And I get calls from the actors, because we picked, we called a couple people and said, you're going to be in the show. And they said, great, what are we playing? You'll see it, we'll find you. So we ended up getting on the plane to start rehearsals with one scene written, and we opened in 10 days. Oh. And it sold out. And we didn't have a clue what we were doing. So we had decided that we were going to do little vignettes, little one acts. So we had the one thing written. And we get back there, and the actor's like, what are we playing? And I said, well, we have a new way of rehearsing this show. We're going to rehearse the first scene till it's perfect. And then we'll give you the second scene. So we spent 2 days rehearsing the first scene, and at night we were going, okay, what's the second scene? I don't know, how about that? So we would come in, and the actors caught on to us after a while, of course. So we got all the way up to the dress rehearsal, to the tech rehearsal. And the show was too short. It was sold out, and it was too short. And it was like, Jane said, people don't care if it's short. I said, it's too short. It's really too short. So I said, we'll write one more, but I'm not learning any lines. That's the rule. Whatever it is, I'm not going to have any lines. So we wrote a scene where Jane was on a date with her new boyfriend, and I was her ex-boyfriend, but I was mute. And we did the show. The show opened. We got away with the whole thing. And the critics reviewed the show and said that they especially liked the scene with the mute boyfriend who has no voice. And that was the one we wrote the night before we opened. So we can write fast, but if we ever ask you to be in one of our shows, ask to see the script first before you say yes, because it was sort of a madhouse, and the actors didn't forgive me for that one at all.
Well, I think you've said that when you are forced to write fast, that a lot of the overthinking gets out of the way.
Yes, I think that's actually good, and actually worked for this show, is when you've been doing it enough and you have an actual craft, you don't have time to second guess. We wrote the Suddenly Susan pilot in 24 hours. That's in my first book. And that's a good story, but it's in my first book. And The Wayans brothers, same thing. We were brought in at the last second, and we had to write that pilot in 24 hours again from scratch. These were, and these shows got on the air and did quite well.
Sure.
And this Do Not Disturb play was the same thing. But when you don't have time to second guess yourself, you just push through. And if you've been doing it long enough, you sort of know what you're doing. We lucked out. We really lucked out.
I'm hoping we can go back to when you said having like a healthy ego and really wanting success in the entertainment industry better or more so than others, or knowing that there's always someone kind of coming up behind you. What do you think stops people from having a successful career?
Well, you have to be able to sit through long periods of nothing. You know, your phone doesn't ring. What we did, and we always did this, we always had three things going at once. We'd be writing one thing while we're performing one thing, and then we're talking about a third thing. And if one thing doesn't work out, you jump to the other thing. That's one of the reasons I was directing too. I'd go direct plays, and you've got to keep moving, you know. And I think when people sit by the phone as an actor or as a writer and your phone's not ringing, you get disheartened and, well, I might as well go to whatever it is. I think it's important to surround yourself with people who are better than you at what you're doing, so you can learn from them and improve. But I think if there's anything else you maybe like as much, go do that. Just go do that, because this isn't for you. You know, I know people who are, I didn't want to miss my friend's wedding, so I turned down that role. I was like, well, okay, okay, but you're not going to get another shot like that. You know, you got to be able to sacrifice stuff until you get to a place where you can pick and choose stuff. But when you're starting out, you gotta be into this 100%.
Interesting. So always have several things, sort of be juggling several things.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times when people are actors anyway, filling out their resumes, and they say they can drive a stick shift, they know how to ride a horse, and they don't. Well, go do that now. The more experience you get, the more better off you're going to be anyway.
Sure.
And it's more fun.
Sure.
More stuff you can do.
Learn a stick in a hilly area.
I did.
So have I, yeah.
I did. It was bad. I learned, I was doing the movie Taps, and they told me, okay, you're going to drive the Jeep in the middle of this scene. It's like, I don't know how to drive a Jeep and it was a big, complicated scene with the tanks and all this other stuff. And I thought, oh, God. So they took me out the night before in a 2.5-ton Army truck and taught me how to drive a stick in that.
Oh, wow. In
the hills of Pennsylvania. And I was able to do it, and I was still like, this is going to be such a complicated setup. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to wreck the shot. So they put me in the Jeep, and right before we shot, Harold Becker, the director, went, oh, you know what? I can't have the noise of the engine on the... Put a rope and just drag him in. It's like, thank God.
Oh, wow.
Thank God. But I did learn how to drive a 2.5-ton Army truck.
Were you a workaholic before your quote-unquote Hollywood career, or does being in the business make you so?
I was definitely a workaholic. Everybody in my family is a control freak workaholic. We just are. My father was an ex-Marine, and he didn't care what we did as long as we did it as best we could. He didn't care if we dug ditches, but you better dig the best ditches and that kind of thing. Not that he was a hard guy. I mean, he was a great guy, but we got our work ethic from him. And but we're all of us are control freaks. And my sister, my brother, my mother, my father, me, my grandmother, we were all like that. So, but it was always the joy came from doing the work and seeing your finished product. That was always great for us. Each individual thing.
And in being a control freak, what if you have to relinquish power to someone else who's a decision maker, a showrunner, a theater owner? How do you say, okay, this is where I take off my hat where I'm in charge and I sort of bow down?
I couldn't do that when I first started. It was tough. I like the inside. I was always biting the inside of my mouth. Shut up, Billy. This isn't. It's not your show. It's not your show. But after a while, you have to learn. I mean, as a producer, you have to learn to delegate. And the best way to be a producer, as far as I'm concerned, is you hire great people and then just let them do their jobs. I mean, as much as I'm saying I'm a control freak, I'm not in terms of if you're working for me and you're doing the costumes or something, I absolutely let you do the costumes. I'm not going to be butting in and tell you how to do your job, that kind of thing. The only thing that I will be possessive of are the scripts and the actors' performances. I don't want to hear the network saying, could we do it again and this time have her do? No, we can't. Next. And Jane and I used to, I would always make Jane sit in the green room with the network people and the studio people, and I'd be on the floor. And there'd be a phone that would go back and forth, and after every take, that phone would ring. It's like, yes? They want you to do that again, and this time have her say such and such. Oh, we did that this afternoon, and we hadn't. And we did that this afternoon. We got it. We're covered. Boom. Or else, actually, I would pick up the phone. She'd tell me that, and I'd say, "Tell them I go to hell." And I hang up, and she'd turn to them and say, "Oh, we already shot it like that." But yeah, the irritating thing, especially coming from the theater and coming into TV, is having people who have no idea how to perform or produce comedy telling you how to produce or perform comedy. I hated that. Hated it. And when you get to, I mean, you have to be, if you're Norman Lear, nobody's telling you anything, that kind of stuff. But I was never quite at that level of tell people to leave me alone. I always had to answer them. I learned from Peter Noah, who ran Anything But Love, when I did that. The best way to deal with the network and the studio people was to talk first. He'd always have all his writers with him when you had the meetings with the network and the studio after each run through. And before they could give you their notes, he would tell them what was wrong and how he was going to fix it, to the point where you had to be stupid to argue with him. You had to feel stupid if you argued with him, and you go, "Oh, that was great," and we'd leave, and it was like, that was really expertly done. Always take control of those meetings. Because too many times you'd see people like, "Oh, yes, I can change that. Oh, yes, I can change that." Well, it's just... Here's the thing I've learned in the business after doing this for 1,000 years. Nobody knows anything. They really don't know anything. If you want to take a class of, how to do this, he can tell you how to write a script, but how many scripts has he written? How many, that kind of thing. And there's no right or wrong way, Because I write fast doesn't mean that everybody has to write fast, but that's the way I work. And I think the more you do, the better you get at whatever it is you're doing, whether you're performing or you're writing or you're producing. The more you do, the better you are. That's just it.
And so there's the craft component, but then there's also navigating personalities.
Oh, yeah.
That's its own probably masterclass.
I lucked out because Jane, my partner, was she was the attack dog. She protected me, and she would deal with the network. She would deal with the studio. She would deal with the prima donna actors if we had them, and I would be in the writers' room. That was my thing, and everybody thought I was the sweet one, and Jane was this tiger. But what they didn't realize is I'd be going, "All right, now you go in there and you tell them," and then she'd go and do it, and they'd go, "Boy, she's a bitch." Well, she wasn't. She was protecting us,
Do you write every day?
Almost every day, yeah. I like to get up first thing in the morning, go straight to the computer. It's an illness, I think. I just do. I go straight to the computer, and if I'm actually in the middle of a project, I will work probably from... First I hike, actually, so I hike first. while I'm hiking, I'm thinking, okay, the next scene is going to be such and such. Then I go and I sit in front of the computer till probably 12 o'clock. I'll take a little break. Then I'll go back and I'll work till about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then I quit. And then if I'm in the middle of something really that I'm really enjoying, suddenly I'll find myself at 1 in the morning going, oh, I got to fix that, you know. So yeah, I do it all the time.
So then what time do you usually start writing? You say you turn on the computer first thing, or do you go for the hike?
I usually hike at 7 in the morning, and then
nice.
probably by 8:30, I'm back, 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm back at the computer.
I see, okay. And do you start with a certain genre, or?
They're always comedy.
They're always comedy.
That's all I do.
That's all you do, right? Okay.
But, you know, but there are different, you know, am I writing a movie? Am I doing another book? Am I, you know, writing another play? I haven't written, Jane passed away 4 years ago, and I have not written a new play since then. But I've fine-tuned other things that we've done, and the 3 books now. I've got another one coming out in spring, I think. So those 3 books have kept me busy, but I'm always in there doing something.
Do you think you'll do another play soon?
Yeah.
In honor of her?
Maybe that, but mostly because my actors are going, Billy, when's the next show? You know?
Sure.
Yeah. And I want to get back on stage again. We've been touring around, and the Boomer Boys musical is the last thing that Jane and I wrote together, and we've been touring that on and off since, I don't know, 6 years ago, maybe longer. And I enjoy doing that, but I'm not done yet. I'm not done. I want to have more to do.
How does story come together for you?
It depends on the show. It depends on the script. I don't think we've ever approached 2 things the same, aside from the first 4 plays, which are all formulaic farces, where if you're doing a farce, you really got to outline it out, I think, because you have so many different pieces that have to come together in the end. So and I learned that from the Lucy writers. Aside from those early farces, and I look back at some of them and go, oh my God, that's horrible. I got to change that next time we do that, you know. But every show has been different. Some of them have been outlined to death. Some of them have been, I got an idea for like Jane's divorce story. It was like I knew I was going to tell a divorce. I didn't know how it was going to go. And then the characters sort of take you off, and you can do that. So it all depends. But to put a story together, I pretty much, I know the basic idea, and then I let the characters run wherever they go.
And you said you often have the idea, sort of the person's cadence, the character's voice.
Yeah. I go back and forth on this. If you're an actor and you have a script, don't paraphrase. Read what's actually there. Because I guarantee you the author has spent months deciding if it's can't or cannot. So honor that, you know, and sometimes it has to do with the timing of the, you know, comedy is all about rhythm. It's about the timing. And why did I bring that up? Except somebody said to me, Billy, you changed the line. I said, I was rewriting it. It was a lie. I couldn't remember the line. But when people do our shows, having just said don't paraphrase the lines, a lot of times if there's something that's a little risque, when we write, there's a line that I won't cross, but the line goes like this, you know. You know, if it's scatological jokes, I don't want it. That kind of stuff. If it is, but it's scatological, but it's really funny, I can make it work, you know, that kind of thing. But schools and a lot of places are always, can we change this to this? And most of the time it's like, yeah, go ahead. I don't really care. If you want to change a reference to, you know, from Charles Lindbergh to somebody else, I don't care about that, you know. But where the jokes are concerned, read them the way they are. Read them the way they're written. We did a Marx Brothers musical called The Night at the Nutcracker, which was great. I just loved. That's one of my favorites. And that came about because I was my kids were little, and I was watching A Night at the A Night at the Opera on TV with them. And I said, I used to imitate Groucho Marx when I was in high school, and I thought, God, I wish I'd written for them. And the next day at the office, Jane came in. She said, I know what I want us to do for the next show. I said, I know what I want us to do. And she said, I want to do a Christmas show. I said, I want to do a Marx Brothers musical. She said, A Night at the Nutcracker. That was it. It was that fast. And suddenly, I wrote a first draft of, like, within a week. We had the whole play mapped out. Because it was, I could hear the voices. I knew the people that we were writing for. That was easy. Trying to think what the hardest ones we did. We did a show called Till Death Do Us Part, and the whole idea of that were 4 different couples. It's going to sound as ridiculous as it is. 4 different couples who are trying to kill their spouses at the same bed and breakfast on the same weekend. That was pretty much the gist of the whole thing. And it was a commentary on marriage and all this other stuff. And I realized after we wrote it that almost every character was based on Jane and me, different versions of us. The hypochondriac, the person who can't stand it anymore, the arguing couple. That was us at one point. Because we started out as boyfriend-girlfriend, and then we ended up breaking up and marrying other people, but we worked together the entire 46 years without one day off. We deserve medals for that, but anyway. But that one was tough to do. And I'm trying to think. Boomer Boys was a big problem because we did this ass backwards, really. A friend came to us and said, I have an idea for a show. Can I pitch it to you? I said, no, we don't take other people's work. We just do our own thing. Sorry, And he said, okay. And he was a friend. So we said, sure. So we met with him and he said, I want to do a show about the changes that men of a certain age go through. And I was about to say no, because it's not our idea. And Jane said, we'll do it. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'd rather write about it than hear you talk about it all the time. So we ended up writing this thing, but what we did is we wrote songs that were completely unrelated to anything. They were just about getting older and things that people go through. And after we wrote the songs, we strung a plot through them, and it was very hard to do because some of them didn't match, they didn't go together. And so we had, I said, okay, you'll be a divorcee, you'll be a widower, you'll be, in a happy marriage, and so we put that whole thing together, and then we opened the show, and there's a beautiful ballad in there that we wrote. A guy singing about his wife and how they fell in love, and then eventually she passes away, and he's singing to her on her deathbed. It was a beautiful song. But as we're doing it on opening night, people in the front row are bawling. Oh, no. And I thought, this is in the wrong show. This is a fluffy comedy about getting older. This is in the wrong show. I found out the people who were crying in the front row was a couple I went to high school with, and she was dying of cancer. Oh. So it was like, oh my God, Billy, what have you done? Oh. So we had to. It was a great song that's in a trunk somewhere, but that's the only really misstep I think we've done in a lot of our stuff.
What lessons have you learned from I Love Lucy, whether it's writing, acting, timing?
All the above. If you study the scripts, you can see how to lay out a farce. You drop little seeds, and then they all come together here, and then there's something that turns it on its head, and then you have the big finale scene. Look at the Chocolate Factory. Look at the any of those shows. The writing is stellar to me. So it's taught me writing. Lucille Ball taught me timing. Vivian Vance too. I think she's so underrated. Everybody loves her, but really study her. She's brilliant. And what I also got out of Lucy was learning who Buster Keaton was, who taught her. And that brought me back to one of the biggest influence in my life, which is Buster Keaton and the gags that he did. And I've tried to emulate a couple of them, and I'm no Buster Keaton. Let me tell you, you have to be in shape to do his stuff. But I learned timing from them. The one thing I learned from Lucy, which was not necessarily a good thing, is if she was on in New York, 10 times a day, I watched it 10 times a day, And I think when you're starting out, if you emulate someone, it's because you have the same ear, comedic ear. It's a rhythm thing. It's musical. All comedy is musical to me, and she was the master, and I was a student. But I think you're connected to somebody when you're starting out for a reason. I think it has to do with the ear, of what you're hearing, and it sort of tunes into what I want to do and all that. But what she would do is I would see her deliver a punchline, and it would start there, and she would finish it over here, and she'd start it over here, and it would finish over there. So I sort of incorporated that into some of the things I do. If I had a joke I want to throw out to the audience, and I would finish it over here. Then I got to work with her, and I sat in a rehearsal, and I realized the reason she started over here and ended over here, she was reading the lines off a cue card. And but it's too late. I do it now, and it works for me. But that's something I didn't plan on learning from her, but I sort of did. And I also learned from Desi Arnaz and Jess Oppenheimer how to produce a show, because I've studied the way they worked. And it feels so similar to me and my group of people back in New Jersey when we put the shows on. Everything's done with a handshake, it's just, and you use the same people over and over again. But the most important thing in terms of performing is you take the most insane situations you can, and you've got to believe they're all real. You've got to believe the characters are real. You've got to believe the situations are real. That's the only way that works.
Do you think not having a degree in theater or writing enabled you to take more risks?
Yeah, probably so. Because I didn't have anything to compare it to. I think if I had studied too much, I would have put boundaries over what I do. As opposed to, I've always been before Nike, it was always just do it, for me. It was just do it. You want to do this, just do it. And yeah, just do it, and life's too short, it better be fun. Put those two together. That's sort of how we work.
Right, and plus you had mentioned previously, I believe, that your father didn't really believe in the theater or as a profession.
Oh, worst day of his life, worst day of my father's life was, because very sports-minded father and his brothers, they were all state this, all state that, and my grandfather was asked to pitch for the New York Giants, and he beat Bobby Jones in some golf tournaments, so they were all sports. And then I came along, and worst day of my father's life was, so you going to try for the baseball team this year? No, I'm going to be in the chorus of Oliver. So, but he came around. He came around. Sure.
But in some ways, you think that gave you more freedom, because when someone's sort of known as being great in this one area, they don't want to let down certain people. Whereas if people have already written you off in some sense, there's a little more freedom. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, my parents never wrote me off. They were, as much as I wasn't the athlete he wanted me to be, he was always there, front row, every show. No, we had a great combination in my house of a work ethic father, insane work ethic father that we've all abused. We've all taken that and just gone nuts with it. And my mother was the unconditional love thing. So you knew that if you failed in something, you could always go home. It was always there for you. And those two things together, I think, most people, I go into comedy because I had a horrible childhood. I had a great childhood. I have a great family. And half the time I think I'm a fraud because I didn't get the horrible thing that made me go into comedy, So instead, this is something I always wanted to do.
Going back to story, What are some questions you always ask yourself when crafting a story?
The original stuff, before I knew what I was doing, was always, what gags do I want to perform? And then I'll put a plot through them. It's the wrong way to write, but that's how we started off. What do I ask when we want to do a story?
That's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but so you're thinking of funny moments where somebody trips.
I knew I wanted to fall out of a window. I knew I wanted to
Okay.
hit somebody in the head with a bottle. You know, that kind of stuff. And then we would sort of cram a plot through it and then turn it into a farce. We got away with that a lot. And in a weird way, the Boomer Boys musical that I was just talking about was the same thing. We had the songs, then we had to figure out a plot to get them all together. But when I structure a story, there's still a part of me that, as an actor, is like, what do I get to do in this? What do I get to play? And in the very early shows, it was also, how many girlfriends can I have in this show? Okay, well, but that doesn't happen anymore. I would say that whatever it is, because they're all so different, it's hard to even answer this. It has to be believable, no matter how broad we go with our shows, and they're broad. Everybody in it has to be a believable character, and that I mostly got from Jane, because her thing was always, how real can we make it? Mine was always, how funny can we make it? And it was a good combo. But I usually, I don't know how to answer that. I really don't. I never analyze, until sitting here today, I never really analyzed the craft of what I do. I just sort of do it. So it's hard for me to even know what I'm saying.
Okay, that's fair. Just lastly, what sense of accomplishment does writing give you?
The weird thing about writing versus acting is I take the acting very personally. If I used to go on an audition, I didn't get it, I feel like, oh, what did I do? And like, if you don't like my writing, I don't care. I just don't care. It's freeing in a weird way. It's fun, and I'm really proud of the work we've done. Yeah, I really am. And I'm never, in the same token, I'm never satisfied that we've finished the job. I always want to go back in and do more.
And I'm only assuming here, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is that because maybe with the acting they're rejecting you more?
Yes.
With the writing, it's not so personal, it's about a character or something that you wrote?
I think that's probably it. Yeah. And there are times that I've gone, back to acting in other things, other people's shows and other people's TV things, just as an actor. And you do. It's like, how am I doing? How am I doing? And I never get that with the writing. Although, I have been to see some of my very early shows, and I sit in the audience going, oh, God, glad nobody knows I'm here.
Why don't you believe in writer's block?
Because I've never had it. I've never had writer's block. To me, you sit down at the thing and you just write. And I can sit there, and maybe it's just me, but I can write for hours at a time. Whether it's good or bad, I'll figure that out tomorrow when I rewrite it. I think the more you do, the better you get. So better to just sit there and do it. In terms of, coming up with an idea to write, I don't think that's a block, but you have to talk that out. So it doesn't happen that fast. But no, a lot of times I've heard people say they have writer's block, and I'm thinking, you're just lazy. I just think you're lazy. Sit down and write, And I pissed a lot of people off by saying that, and I'm probably pissing some off right now by saying that, but that's how I feel.
Do you think that some people, it's not being lazy, but it's they're writing for this audience. Maybe they have, I know Stephen King talked about having like a teacher from the past that was very critical, and he would kind of write to please that person, imaginary person. Do you think they're envisioning someone being critical, or I'm crap, I'm never going to do anything. Why should I even sit here and do this? But it's not that they can't come up with ideas.
I don't know. I've been lucky in that most of my stuff was with a partner. So we always bounced things off each other, and
Sure.
and that was crucial.
It does help, yeah.
And I used to tell close friends that I was pissed off that Jane's not doing enough. I'm writing everything, and she's just sitting there reading magazines and all that. And then I came to the realization, couple of years into it all, that sometimes writers can think before they speak, and that's what Jane was doing. She'd be flipping, and so she'd be sitting there reading a magazine, and all of a sudden she'd say something, and I'd go, "Oh yeah," and then I would change everything I had just done. So we were equal partners, but I worked much more than I should have, and she worked, in my mind, not at all, but it wasn't true. And but having a partner to bounce things off of is great. The bad part of having a partner is you each develop your own strengths, and the other person takes the stuff that you're not good at, and that's their strength. So now that Jane's not with me anymore, I have to go fix a couple things. And I don't write the sentimental parts very well. That was Jane's territory. I would write the broad stuff, the funny stuff, and so that's the bad part of having a partner, is you don't develop all the stuff you should be developing, or maybe I have and just don't know yet, because I haven't sat down to do it. But there's always, with a partner, there's always somebody to bounce things off of. There's also somebody to, you're in this together, so you feel safer,
That is true.
It's also you're each other's muse in a way too,
Is write what you know bad advice?
No, but I always abridge that. I think, you should only write about what you know is fine, but you can also write about what you research, and that's really been fun. We wrote, my relatives came over to New York from Holland, my father's side, in the early 1600s. So we wrote a whole thing on that, and just to go in there and research everything was fascinating, and I feel perfectly comfortable writing about that. I didn't live there, If it's only write about what you know, Stephen King couldn't write any books, because that was a terrible example. I think when you're starting off, probably write what you know, sure. I think that's okay advice. If that's all you did, we wouldn't have science fiction, we wouldn't have horror. There's a lot more out there.
You say it's easier to rewrite than it is to write. Can you explain?
Yes, if you show me any script anywhere, or even if you look at any script anywhere and something's not working, you spot it immediately, so you can fix it. The first draft has to be, you have to just shoot it out and get it there, and then you can sort of chip away at it. But so to me, the rewrite's the fun part, and that's really the part I enjoy doing the most. I'm a great editor of a script. I can punch things up that aren't working. We had on Newhart, and we've done this ever since, when you're watching the run through, and if something works, it gets a big check mark in your script, and if it doesn't work, there's an X, and you know that that's the spot you have to work on. But the rewrite's the fun part, and a lot of times you're doing it in a writer's room, on a sitcom anyway. You're doing it in a room with other funny people, and it's like, who can top, I can top you and you can top me, and it goes back and forth, and it's just a ball to do it. The first draft, it's not that it's hard, it's just that needs to get out of the way. You need to get it out of the way, and then you can jump in and play, you know. And then in terms of a play, during rehearsals, you know, you're fine-tuning it yet again. That's also fun to do. If you're working with somebody who's particularly good at something and they're embellishing something you do, oh, I'm going to change that and give him more to do there. That's fantastic. You get in front of a preview audience and you hear them laughing at this, but they're not laughing at that. Oh, they're always right. So I was wrong. Change that, you know. And then when you finally get the whole thing put together, whether it's a sitcom, whether it's a movie, whether it's a play, there's a satisfaction of everything you had to get through to get to this part, and that's the real fun.
So I know you said that the audience is always right, kind of like the customer is always right.
Yeah.
But there can be difficult customers. There can be people that they just go out of their way to be sort of onerous. Do you ever find that with an audience member? Are they always right?
Well, individually, I don't care what they think. What I care about is the group. If the whole, and in one performance, if something doesn't work, let that not work in the next performance before I'll listen to anybody. Somebody's got an opinion in a rehearsal, an actor or custodian, who, it doesn't matter who it is. If somebody has I'll always listen. Doesn't mean I'll take the note, but I'll always listen, And, but what I have found, when, let's say, 5 different people read your script, and this one will say, on page 26, I didn't understand the such and such. And you think, well, you just didn't get that. And then somebody else says, on page 26, that line doesn't make any sense. Or it's like, oh, there's more than one person talking about the same, and they may have different notes, but it's on the same page. That means there's something wrong with that page, or actors who trip over the lines when you're auditioning them, and it's like, oh, everybody's tripped on that one line. The line's wrong. Change it, So you always got to listen. And but collectively, as an audience, they tell you what's right and what's wrong. And a lot of times, like there was, I don't remember which show it was, but there was a show I thought it was a mediocre show. I really did. I thought we did a hack job on this one. And the audience went nuts for it. I went, oh, I'm wrong. Okay, I'm wrong, but I always listen to the audience, listen to the notes from whoever wants to give them to you, but listen with a grain of salt, because most actors give notes about themselves and their roles and not about the piece. And you have to be able to separate, it's like, yeah, I know that's what you want, but that doesn't help the show. So I'm not doing that one,
And what about people that shower you with praise? Do you always believe them, or is there always... Okay.
I never believe them.
I mean, is it the one that's sort of curmudgeon-y that you're like, you know what, they're probably telling me the truth?
The only reviews I remember are the bad ones. That's the only thing I remember. We did a show for Don Rickles and Richard Lewis, and and I'm not exaggerating, I have a list, a pile of bad reviews that we got because everybody hated that show. It was at the height of political incorrectness, and we were doing a show for Don Rickles, and they kept trying to get me to change it. And it's like, no, I'm doing a show for Don Rickles. He's got to do what he does, The LA Times said I should be beaten with wire hangers for writing the show. That was the best review we got, I think, too. Wow. Yeah. But in terms of the compliments, because I don't like seeing people after the show and having them give me a review right away. It's just like half the time it's like people have to say something complimentary to you because they came to see your show, So I don't go for that stuff. If I really want your opinion, I'll call you the next day and say, what do you really think? And you can tell me everything you thought, But I just smile and say thank you the night of the show, because I'm glad you came, and I'm glad you like it, or at least you say you liked it. But I can usually tell, I hear the laughs.
How much of what you do is writing what you want to write versus figuring out what other people want to watch?
I always write what I want to. I always write for myself. I I write for the audiences that I've had for the last 50 years. The same people come to all my shows because I always go back to the same place and put them all on. I write for those people. And I don't know that there's much around now that's similar to what I do. It's sort of in a weird way, it's slightly old-fashioned and not at the same time, But because nobody does big physical comedies anymore, they just don't. I was looking at what comedies do I watch now, and for the most part, I don't watch comedy because I spend too much time going, that's terrible, I should change, why'd you cast that person? That's what I do. But, so I mostly watch dramas. If there's a detective and a dead body, I'm usually there. But, I was trying to think of what are the last big comedies that I've seen, and I couldn't name anything. There were what I would call gentle comedies, like Trying on TV, or Murders in the Building, those kind of things. Those are fine. But the kind of stuff that we wrote, I don't see anything close to that. Not saying that ours is that great. I'm just saying that in terms of a style, I don't see anybody doing what we do. I think if you write to try and sell something as opposed to what you want to write, it's a mistake. I think it's fake. And I don't think you can put as much passion into something that's being done for sales reasons than you can for, this is something I really want to, this will be fun, this will be great, this has happened to my friend or something, and it's a story you want to tell. I think that's more important.
So even though maybe you don't have the full demographic breakdown of your audience, or maybe you do, you just remember them coming to your shows, and you got to laugh here, they went crazy here, and so you can intuitively pick up, this is what my theater-going audience wants. I may not know what income bracket they're in or age group. Okay.
Yeah. And then I go out to, there are a couple theaters that, if you've done one of our shows, you've probably done 4 or 5 of our shows. So I know those pockets and where they are. And those, same thing, it's the same, I hear the same reactions in their theaters that I did when we did ours. And that's been great.
Are you ever sort of a fly on the wall after maybe they go out to coffee and cake somewhere? Do you kind of want to sit and just know who they are?
No, but what I have done is go to shows without telling anybody I'm there. And then I hear, they did one of our shows, and the lady in front of us, older lady, just crying hysterically, and she didn't know who we were. And she just turned to me and said, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but oh my God, I can't stop laughing." And I went, "Okay, great. Our job is done."
That's a real compliment.
Yeah,
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
That's somebody not blowing smoke.
Yeah, right.
What do people want to watch?
I don't know, because I don't know what people want to watch anymore, because I really don't see any comedies at all. It seems like, I was just joking about it. But if it's a detective show, there's 5 million of them on the air. That's all that people apparently want to watch, except for Shogun, which is fantastic. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that the business is continuing to change. I think comedy's got to come back, especially because the world being what the world is. You need it. You need escapism. You need to laugh. That's why the Marvel things are so popular, I think, is escapism. And some of the best comedies ever done for film were done after the Depression, right after the Depression. All the Marx Brothers and W.C. Fields, all those guys. So I don't know what people want to watch anymore, and So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and hope that they come back to what we do.
Sure. Maybe a true crime farce.
Could be. I did one of those already.
A forensic one.
I did one of those
you did?
already.
Okay.
Yeah, we did an Alfred Hitchcock show where I did it was sort of a spoof of all his. I shoved as many different films of his into one play, and it's called Wrong Window, and that was fun. That was fun. Yeah.
Sounds good. How do you create good television?
Well, in terms of sitcoms, because that's really my thing, to create good television, you need to find the comedian. You need to find the star, and it can't be someone you turn into a comedian. It has to be a comedian. We did a lot of shows for stand-ups. We did Richard Lewis, Martin Lawrence, Bob Newhart, Don Rickles. I can't remember them all.
Andrew Dice Clay.
Andrew Dice Clay, that's right. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that was a trip. You need to find that person, and then you need to surround them with great actors, because these people are not actors; they're stand-ups, and I find most of the best people to surround them with are theater actors. It elevates their acting, and it's more of a rock that you can depend on, while this other guy just is the funny guy, you know. Working Andrew Dice Clay, that was an interesting time, I will say. I'll tell this very quickly. Andrew was a joy to work with. He really was, but he was off the wall. And every Thursday there'd be a problem on the set with him. You know, we'd get phone calls. He keeps trying to pretend there's a fly buzzing around his head, and he's talking in a Spanish accent, and all this other stuff. So we would go down, and we realized after 1 or 2 weeks that it was because he didn't know his lines, and he should have known them by then, so he was creating some sort of chaos so he could then learn his lines. So we had Elaine Stritch on the show, which I loved having her. And she was rough. She was a pain in the neck. But we get a phone call from her, you know, about her, that she's having a breakdown on the set, so I have to go down and talk to her. So while I'm there, I look over and I see Andrew, and he's sitting over there, and he's polite and just sitting there. And I went up to him and said, "Andrew, what's the deal? Every Thursday, you act like a lunatic. You do this, you're buzzing the flies, and you're talking Spanish, and now, you know, this week you know your lines, you're on time, and you're well behaved. What is that about?" And he just pointed to Elaine Stritch and went, "There's only room for one." You know. Anyway.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Have you seen Hacks?
Yes, love it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah. I don't have it. I'm not streaming it, but I've been watching it on YouTube. The different vignettes that they've posted. And,
yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It's
I'm
really
enjoying
good.
it.
We wrote for her for a little bit, not on that show, on a very strange show called Center of the Universe with John Goodman and Gene and Olympia Dukakis, Ed Asner, Dietrich Bader. Is a great cast, and I think it only lasted 13 episodes, but yeah, she's terrific.
Yeah, I love it. How do you find the drive to write again? Different things happen, life bumps up against us. How do you find the drive?
That's sort of an oasis for me to go write, and then the rest of the world goes away except for right in front of me. So it's always been good. It's my go-to when things get rough. I just go jump into something else.
So that's not a challenge, because you said you don't believe in writer's block for yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's actually therapy for you.
It is, yeah.
What would stop you from writing?
Oh.
Aside from the computer being down.
Yeah. Well, I can go on vacation without taking a laptop with me, so that I do. I do like to go places. What can stop me from writing? If I'm just acting in somebody else's thing, I don't like to write at the same time. It just takes my head out of the game, you know. So if I did I just did a while back. I did a Nickelodeon show for one of my friends. I did a guest star spot on that. I didn't write it all that week, so I was just there doing that. Keep the priorities straight.
Okay. And when you do go on vacation, do you feel that if you don't take your laptop, it almost makes you excited to return back to it? Because it's like forbidden, like, ooh, I'm going to open my laptop. Oh, it's not there.
No, it's weird. When I'm on vacation, I don't think about it at all. I just like where I am and who I'm with and stuff. And then when I get back home, then it's like, oh, I'm back in this. Now I'm back in here. I've compartmentalized my entire life. So I do TV out here, and they don't care about my plays. And then I do my plays back there, and they don't care about my TV stuff. And I've always been able to turn it on and off. And then Jane and I were boyfriend-girlfriend when we started, and then we weren't, so I was able to do that. So if I'm on vacation, I'm on vacation.
What are the ways you can have a stage play produced?
Well, if you do it the way I do it, is you pay for it yourself. No, for the most part, they always say don't invest in your own shows. I've always invested in my own shows because I can't ask you for your money if I'm not going to put mine in. I just won't do it. The first way I produced was in the first off-Broadway show I did was Drop Dead, and I raised the money for that out of a fluke. We had done the show Drop Dead at this theater that was our home base called the Dam Site. And a guy came up to me after the show and he said, if you're taking this to New York, I'm going to write you a check. I said, oh, we are taking it to New York. and he gave me a big check. And I said, okay, now I just have to go get the rest. So I started with my parents' friends, and then I raised, and I look back and I was like, this is insane, because I know how hard it is to raise money now. I raised enough for an off-Broadway show in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
To people that, you have a friend, great, I'll talk to him, boom. And we put that whole thing together. I did a 6-week run of the show, and that's all I had mapped out in my head because I had always done 6-week runs of our other shows down in the regional theater. And and at the end of the 6 weeks, I gave everybody their money back and we went home. And it didn't dawn on me until maybe 2 years later, I could have kept this running. We were a hit in New York, it was successful. We just closed it because I only planned for 6 weeks. I think if you have a new show, to answer your question directly, you do a 99-seater. Go put it on there. It doesn't cost much and people can see it. And if it's really worth your while after you get reviewed and all that sort of thing, people will find you. That's one way to do it. Second way is when you were making TV money, which is what I was doing for a lot of our shows, I would just go pay for the show. I'd like some of that money back now, but I did a couple off-Broadway shows with a check, and there are also theaters, I can't even think of the name right now, but there are theaters in Florida and there's theaters in Chicago that you can submit your plays to, and if you get them done there and you get it's all about the critics and how is the box office. If you can sell the show, if you get held over, suddenly you're going to get published with was Samuel French, now it's Concord Theatrical. They'll find you because nobody wants to work anymore as far as I'm concerned. They want to find a success and they be part of it. Nobody wants to take a chance. The easiest way to raise money is you go to a financial advisor person and find people who want to just throw money away for tax reasons. Grab their money, put it into a show. And I also am a firm believer in doing it yourself. I think you do everything yourself. No one's going to come knocking on your door and ask you to, okay, I hear you have a play. Nobody's ever going to do that. Go produce it yourself. You can do it cheap at these 99-seaters. You do enough of those things and you have a reputation. You get name actors to guest star in those shows. If you're doing a 99-seat show, you're probably only doing it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday anyway. So get your connections together to find a celebrity name to be in the show. Not the ideal way to do a show, but that helps. And eventually, once you get a body of work, there's no telling what can happen from there. I was very lucky in that we wrote comedy plays for a living, and that was a living. I made great money doing that. Forget the TV stuff. I made good money on royalties from comedy plays, and looking back, it's like, who knew you could do that? Mostly you hear, I go into the theater and I have to work another job because I can't pay for anything. We made a living because we tapped into something which was not being done at the time. We started at the height of dinner theater, so if it had some sort of sex name in the title, it usually sold out. Your title is very important, by the way. And once we got the first show published and the second show, well, I think by the third show, we were actually making a living as playwrights. And the acting career, aside from us acting in our plays, the acting career just took sat on a shelf.
And so now if someone wanted to, let's suppose I have no experience as a playwright, but I had this idea, I would then approach a 99-cent theater and I would almost rent it for like a month or whatever, so I pay the box office.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can get people to pay for it if you don't have the money, but you find somebody, find your parents or find, whatever. And then the 99-seater, and a lot of them are just, I think most of them are 6-week runs. So, and you can always have different casts and all that stuff, that sort of thing. But yeah, do it that way. I think there's really no formula to it, but I think that's one of the easier ways to do it.
Do they allow you to have rehearsals there, or no, that's a separate cost?
You're renting that too. You're renting for that.
Okay. So that's on top of renting it for the audience?
Yes, and you would probably rent a rehearsal space, or if somebody has a conference room, there's your rehearsal space. Somebody has a house with a big garage, there's your rehearsal space. You don't have to, there's ways to save money. But once you put it up, you're paying for like the tech rehearsal and the dress rehearsal, and then the weekends you're doing the show. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
And then where are you getting costumes? Thrift stores, costume rental places? Okay.
Yep.
And props, same thing. You could
Props
go.
would be and whatever I have in the garage that I need. It's what you get. That's how you start doing this stuff.
Sure.
And yeah.
And most importantly, the actors. How are you paying them?
Well, if you're doing a show out here I think for equity, you're only getting like $5-10 a night for as long as it's under 99 seats.
Okay. And so do you pay actors also for rehearsals or no?
I think so.
Okay.
I know we did way back. We did one show out here. Which one was it? But yeah, you pay, but you're basically paying gas money.
Wow, so even you could make more as an extra. It sounds like non-union extra work, and you get fed pretty well.
And the other bad part is when you're producing a show out here in those kind of theaters is you're already you get a 6-week run, and after the second week somebody says, I have a TV pilot, I have to leave. You got to replace them. So
I see.
Yeah.
What are different ways that a playwright can make money from their work?
Well, you get, if you're published, you get a piece of every script that's sold. You get paid for the licensing fee for someone to, do your show at their theater. If there's merchandise that goes along with your show, you can sell that, you can make that. If you're play can turn into a TV series, you make a great deal of money doing that. And if it can be turned into a film, you make a great deal of money doing that. And all the shows that we've done, on 25 shows, we've only had one show option for a movie, and they never made it. I mean, some shows belong on stage only, and some of them you look at it and you go, oh, that would make a good show, you know, good TV show. But your money comes from you have to be published to make money on a play, really. Or if it gets optioned to be on a Broadway run before you actually publish it, you're going to make money off the box office. But it's possible to make a living as a playwright.
Can you take us through the process of once you're published, how does that work, and how do you become published?
Our first play was Love, Sex, and the IRS, and we opened it at the Dam Site Theater in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. And after our 6-week run, we held it over for 4 more weeks. Or they held it over, I wasn't producing it. And we took letters from the producer with the script and all the critic reviews, and we shipped it up to Samuel French. Again, it was now called Concord Theatricals because they bought up a bunch of Tams Whitmark and Music International and Samuel French. And they agreed to publish the show. What that means, basically, is they put the synopsis of your show in their catalog. The catalogs go out to all the theaters who are looking for shows. People find the show and go, that's the one I want to do. They call up and they make a deal, depending on the size of the theater and the cost of the tickets that they're going to sell. And if it's an amateur production, it's less. And then if it's a professional equity production, the cost is more. And twice a year, you would get a check from the publisher saying, here are the places that have done your show, and here's the check. And if it's a professional production, you get paid on a monthly basis. And then once a year, you get paid for all the scripts, for all the actual books that you've sold. And trying to think what else there is. That's it.
And how do you take it from amateur to professional? What's the process?
No, I don't do anything. That's just if it's an equity theater that wants to do your show, that's professional.
Ah, that's what it would designate it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I see. So that's up to who's putting it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like a summer stock in some places would be a non-equity production. They would still technically be an amateur. Same size theater as an equity production is now a professional theater, you know.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's been funny through the years. The people that have done our shows, I'm always finding out somebody did one of our shows. Oh, that was one of my first plays. It's like, oh, cool, you know. And then Olympia Dukakis directed a couple of ours. Burt Reynolds directed one. I just found out last week, I was listening to some podcast, and Rashida Jones apparently did Love, Sex, and the IRS when she was at Harvard. It's like, oh, that's cool. You know, I don't know any of these things.
When people do turn their plays in to a Samuel French type entity, how are people able to purchase them? Where do they find them?
Oh, well, everybody sort of knows to go to them for these catalog, and they break all the shows down by the characters, 2 characters, 3 characters, 4 characters, so you know where you're going. And if you have no budget, you're in the 2 character section going, oh, I haven't done that show. Internationally, it's separate. Internationally, there are Samuel French, I keep calling them that, what are they called? Concord Theatricals, you know. They have salesmen, basically, who work for them, who are calling theaters and suggesting plays and all that sort of thing, or doing some social media things to try and sell your shows. The foreign shows, for us, if it's an English-speaking show, they go through Concord. because there's agents that they have in different countries pushing your shows. If it's an international, if it's a foreign language production, I have a different agent who handles that, and they have contacts all over the world who are also selling your show. And then I would get, somebody in Romania wants to do your show. I said, okay, great. And they send me a Romanian script translation for me to approve. Now, I don't speak Romanian, and I would just go, yeah, it's fine, and throw it back. And so that's how those are done. But people go, it's a combination. Mostly it's people going to them with the catalog saying, I want to do the show, or they heard about the show, who handles it. Oh, it's them, and they go to them. But at the same time, they have people who are on social media and talking to different people around the country, selling the shows.
That's fascinating. Almost like cold calling.
Yeah, I
like,
guess so.
Yeah. Billy, I got this great, mother-daughter drama or two sisters, and what do you think? And can I send it to you? And, oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
And I think on the Concord, I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. On the Concord Theatrical website, I think you can read like the first couple pages of each show if you want to, and if you go on the website, you can you can buy the scripts from there and download things.
Sure. And they used to have Samuel French here in Studio City.
Yeah.
Why are stage plays so meaningful to you?
Because that's where I started learning the business, and that's and because it's live, that's crucial to me. I've enjoyed doing TV, I've enjoyed doing film, but you don't have the immediate feedback. You have to wait till it's finished and then you see it. With the theater, every night is brand new and it's all between you and that audience, and no two shows are alike, even though they are. Everything's rehearsed to be spontaneous. Let's say that.
And there's an adrenaline high.
Major
They
adrenaline
go,
high.
You're behind stage, something goes wrong, you're trying to cover it up, and the audience doesn't know, and it's you feel like you've accomplished magic.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. I haven't done it recently, but yeah, it's